Thank you very much. General Surya, General Ratnanayake, members of this very august and distinguished audience, I am privileged to speak to you today essentially from an Indian perspective. What I see is the post-conflict Sri Lanka's effect on regional stability. We got a very good and a very precise, clear presentation of the issues when the Defence Secretary, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, spoke in the inaugural session. And since then, there have been a large number of excellent contributions, in a sense leaving me very little room for original thinking. But I will try to summarize the perspectives we see from India regarding Sri Lanka. First of all, let me say, the elimination of the LTT, the decimation of the LTT was widely received as a very, very happy event, because LTT was perceived in the length and breadth of India as an anti-Indian organization, besides being a terrorist organization. It had diabolically assassinated a former Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. It had engaged in drug trafficking in India. It had assisted the training of Maoist groups, separatist groups in other parts of India. And therefore, if anyone were to think by the recent problems that India and Sri Lanka have had with each other on the UNHCR, that is an Indian response to favor the LTT, that would be wrong. In fact, the elections in Tamil Nadu had never been fought on whether we should support the LTT or not. The last assembly election to the State Assembly of Tamil Nadu was held in 2011, and the issue was corruption, and in the particular, the role of the DMK, which was then ruling party, on in the corruption in the telecom scam, and they lost on that issue. If it was a Sri Lanka issue, then I'm sure that the DMK would have won, because they were perhaps the most aggressive of all in articulating outside the political platform the issues of the Tamils in Sri Lanka. So therefore, I would like to say, first of all, that the victory achieved by the Sri Lankan army and the efficiency in which this conference has been held, that perhaps you will soon put, the Sri Lankan army will soon put the Israeli army to shame in terms of efficiency. It's now no more the old Sri Lanka, but it's now a Sri Lanka with a highly efficient, highly motivated army. So from the Indian perspective, therefore, the first impact we see is that a developing nation, a democratic developing nation which Sri Lanka is, saddled with the problems of history, of a post-colonial society, can resolve to fight to finish a treacherous terrorist organization which was internationally entrenched and which fed on the grievances of a minority within the state. That this could be done, that a democratic society which has been saddled with this division, which mostly is artificial, because I have said in my earlier intervention yesterday that after all there is no difference really between the Tamils and the Sri Lankans, the Sinhalese. They both come from the same heritage, the same background, and to call it an ethnic strife is totally wrong. if ethnicity means racial difference. Even linguistic differences, there are hardly any. With my knowledge of Tamil and Sanskrit, can understand a good part of Sinhalese, because there are so many Sanskrit words in Sinhalese. Even the script, the principle of the Sinhalese script, is not very different from the script of the Tamils. So therefore, the differences have arisen because of certain historical reasons that emanated from the British rule in this country, where the Tamils got a disproportionate share of employment and got a disproportionate share of admission to universities for their proximity, which they had developed to the British in India and constantly are translated here. The correction to that was overcompensated, and that is why the tensions arose and the grievances arose. And in feeding on that, this terrorist organization came into being. Everyone thought that this is not possible this is not a terrorist organization that can be eliminated. Many people were even persuaded that they had a just cause, but they were committed to a single party Marxist state, not for a democratic Elam, but a dictatorship of the LTTE. And that has been now eliminated. Fight to the finish was conducted by a democratic party, democratic Sri Lanka, despite all the international pressures that were brought on them to seek a negotiated settlement. So this has had an impact in many countries, including India, that this is the way to fight terrorism. It is possible to fight terrorism and fight it to the finish. The second impact that we see is that this has been achieved without assistance from any of the major powers, without an assistance from any of the permanent members of the UN Security Council, without the ground troops of the United States. Certainly there were some countries which helped, including India, but it was fundamentally an indigenous military operation which led this battle and took it to the finish. Therefore, without any formal military alliance with any big power, Sri Lanka has achieved this objective. This too has had a major impact in India. The third thing that we notice is that this achievement of victory has been got after a prolonged meddling by third parties and do-gooder countries who sought to legitimize the terrorist outfit called LTT rather than demoralize them. I'm particularly referring to the intervention of Norway, which in fact lionized the LTTE and made it out to be some kind of Salvation Army, when in fact LTT should have been put in its place, and the international community should have supported the Sri Lankan government to at least to bring them to a place where they have no value or effect on the society. So this ability to fight after the whole problem has been made almost intractable, and then simplify it, make a commitment, and eliminate it is the third impact that I see, which has had on at least amongst the Indian people. Fourth, there is a slogan that we use in India called zero tolerance of terrorism. And now Sri Lanka has demonstrated that this is not just a slogan, but it is an achievable objective if the political leadership is resolute. Even during the middle of the war, there were several interventions from other countries to find a negotiated settlement. And if in fact at that time the Sri Lankan government would have been ready, even the LTT would have become ready after the reverses they had suffered. But there was a resolution, and that resolution was carried to its finality and gave meaning to the concept of zero tolerance. What is more impressive is the impact that we have now witnessed, despite all the propaganda to the contrary, that their total victory has been followed by extensive rehabilitation and reconciliation work. And this has had an effect in the Tamil areas. The alienation of Tamils, as it's called popularly in fashionable NGOs and their conferences, appears to be extremely exaggerated, judged by independent verification of the feeling of the Tamil people after this war. Yes, certainly in the beginning, there was this question whether the Tamils would be regarded as a defeated community, or that it is Sri Lanka which is one in which patriotic Sinhalese and patriotic Tamils both can share the victory. There's a well-known magazine in India, in Tamil Nadu, called Tughlaq, which is edited by a renowned writer called Cho Ramaswamy. And Cho Ramaswamy sent his reporters to Jaffna and to Batticaloa in April of this year. And he went to villages, he went to factories, he went to politicians, he went to cinema actors, all kinds of people, and they interviewed them and asked them their opinion. And this has been published in five monthly issues of the Tughlaq, and has been translated now, and the translation is also available. And I'll quote some of them, just to make it clear that this is not an alienated community, that as people make it out to be. First is Mr. Dana Palasingam, editor of Dinakural, which is a Jaffna Tamil newspaper. And he says, "We don't take the protests of Tamil Nadu politicians seriously. They adopt several stands in Sri Lanka issue for getting votes there. Otherwise, our needs is different from their demand. And if we accept what the Tamil Nadu politicians want, it will be defeat once again for us. We have given up our Tamil Elam demand." This is an editor saying. "In spite of all the past experience, if we take the demand in our hands, we will ruin the future of the remaining Tamils of Sri Lanka." This is what the editor says. Similarly, Anand Sagari, who is a politician, secretary of TULF, he says the same thing here. "Indian Tamils were the ones who had raised the independent Tamil Nadu demand even before we had started it. However, you yourself," he is telling the Tamils of India, "you yourself had given it up, got used to the system of state government vested with powers, and live under the rule with satisfaction and peace. The Tamils here too like this only. It would be appreciated if your protest is aimed at achieving this for us. Some Sinhala leaders may commit some errors for their political gains. However, the majority of Sinhalese are good people, and it's very wrong to attack them in Tamil Nadu. It should not happen in the land where Mahatma Gandhi was born. It will only affect us further here." Then the mayor of Jaffna, who's a Tamil, Yogeshwara Padgunarasa. "Tamil Nadu, where around 80 million Tamils live, cannot be converted into a separate state. The Tamils in Tamil Nadu should think as to how it is possible to demand a separate state for a few lakhs of Tamils in Sri Lanka. Out of 20 million population of the nation, just in the north and eastern provinces of Sri Lanka, excluding the Muslim Tamils, upcountry Tamils and Indian origin Tamils, everyone except the Tigers and their close supporters have given up the Tamil Elam demand long ago. Kindly understand this fact that there are chances that the form of your protest will only spell more trouble for us instead of doing good to us." So it goes on and on. I can read more and more, but my own independent investigation also supports this view that the Tamils of Sri Lanka do not need foreign attention for their safekeeping. They feel today secure that their children can go to school and return back without being recruited by the LTT as child soldiers. The women say that they are secure that their husbands can go to work and return back in the night. They feel secure about that. Normalcy is something that they have tasted after a long time, and they don't want to give it up. That doesn't mean that the the Tamils of Sri Lanka do not want a share in power, but that's a democratic demand. It can be agitated democratically. Now, the impact of all this is that the terrorists in India, or those who supported the terrorists in India, have now been reduced to shedding crocodile tears for human rights violations, which in my opinion, by the way, if you a close reading of the statistics, shows is vastly exaggerated. And as it's been pointed out, that in any war, there's going to be collateral damage. And that collateral damage will affect some innocent people, especially if the innocent people are used as shields, as the LTT did. And therefore, to say that Sri Lanka should be singled out for human rights excesses and there should be an international investigation for it is, in my opinion, absurd, and it was wrong for the United States to have brought such a resolution. I hope that the next session of the UNHCR, they give up this whole thing. In any case, there is a process going on in this country, in Sri Lanka, on what is to be done about it. Although the LTT has been reduced to a rump and may function much like the Nazis functioned, Nazi soldiers or generals functioned from Argentina after World War II, there are other terrorists who have to be tackled. And therefore, the message of Sri Lanka has direct impact on the way we in India think. Now, this terrorism is in parts affecting even countries like China. I was in a conference in China in the end of June, and there they told me that the newspapers that time were full of some terrorist attack in Xinjiang, and they said that these people who came in to do it were actually trained abroad in another country, and they came over. This is the issue that today we have to consider, that how do we deal with terrorists? We are given lectures very often to negotiate with terrorists. And this, in my opinion, is a dangerous thing. Yesterday, His Excellency, the former ambassador of Pakistan, made a reference to Kashmir. Now, I don't know what provoked it, but certainly I will have to say a few words, otherwise my friends in India would ask me why I kept quiet about it. So I'd like to say that we in India are facing terrible terrorism from people who clearly come across the border, and therefore we are concerned as to how to resolve this issue. The ambassador mentioned about the wishes of the people. There's nothing in the legal instruments that India signed to acquire Kashmir which requires that wishes of people have to be ascertained. In fact, even Pakistan has a fair number of kingdoms which merged into Pakistan where the wishes of the people were not ascertained. And India had 450 kingdoms which were merged into India, because the British, when they left, they didn't leave the whole of India to us. They partitioned it first, and then they declared all the kingdoms that they had taken over in their occupation of India as independent kingdoms, and giving them the right that they could be independent, or they could merge with Pakistan, or they could merge with India. And out of 600 countries, 600 kingdoms, 450 kingdoms chose to merge with India. And one of them was Kashmir. Now, to ascertain the wishes of the people was an assurance. given by the then Prime Minister, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru. And he took the matter to the United Nations. United Nations also passed a resolution on the question of ascertaining the wishes of the people through a plebiscite. But there's been non-compliance of that because the resolution as is framed required Pakistan to first comply with take certain steps, which has not been done. So it's been lying uncomplied, without compliance. Furthermore, the assurance given by Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru was not placed before the Cabinet of India. So the future generations of India are not bound by what Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru had promised. And if anyone wants to ascertain the wishes of the people, they should ask Jawaharlal Nehru, not the future generations of India.